Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Zdrojewski. I'm the Technology Director here at the Oakfield, Alabama School District in New York State. I have to throw in New York State because people hear Alabama in there. With me today is Bob and Gail from ClassLink. I like to have the representation from the vendors here. I've worked with them on other NYSCATE and ISTE, I think, presentations too. I'm going to do the majority of the presentation in the beginning, and then since ClassLink is such a wide tool, I'm only going to cover a small piece of the pie. I'm going to leave the rest, just so you know what other pieces come in the puzzle here, to Bob and Gail to jump into in about 30 minutes from now. So a little bit of background of myself. I've been here now for 6 years. This is my 6th year as a school district administrator at the Oakfield School District. Prior to that, I was a middle school technology classroom teacher for 14 years at the Amherst Central School District, which is near Buffalo, New York. My second career I also do here, I've been doing since 2012, is an adjunct professor at the Canisius School, which is also in Buffalo, New York area. It's a fully online program, so it's nice. I can teach from wherever. My students are wherever, mostly in New York State, but sometimes out. So if you know of anyone, my little plug here, that needs to get a master's program or even an advanced certificate, especially now more than ever during the pandemic, remote learning, take a look at Canisius College at the EdTech program. There's 3 of us in the program that teach that, and it's a nice way to get a advanced certificate all the way through a master's program. So I see we have a bunch of people with us today. What we're doing is recording this session so that we can post it afterwards. So if you want to share with a colleague or whatnot, I'm hoping to be able to take this recording and put it on my website, which is robztraining.com. Tried to make it real simple. I got a long last name. So robztraining.com will take you to my blog. And I've been blogging since about 2008. So a lot of my recorded presentations from NYSCATE, FETC, ISTE are all posted there. And I'll just add this one to the mix. So anything, Bob or Gail, that you want to add off in the beginning here before we start rolling with the slide deck?
No, we're good. We'll just assist and fill in if you want us to. Okay.
All right, so if anytime, guys, you have any questions, there is a chat box. You can type them in there. Our moderator today is Jonathan, so he'll be able to interject here and stop me if need be so we can answer something in context. But if not, put those questions in there, and then we'll address them when we get towards the end. So a little bit about our school district here. We have about 750 students. I would call that a small school. Where I came from in Amherst, there was 3,000 kids. 125 teachers. This is the big bullet point here, the 2.4 full-time staff. There's me, more from the instructional side. There's Rich, who would normally be sitting behind me here. His desk is over there. He is on the IT side. He handles everything from telephones to computers to fax machines to the doorbell system, everything. When you're in a small rural district, you kind of wear many hats. And beyond that, we have a 2-day-a-week person. His name is Cagney, and he's from BOCES that we contract out with. So there is 2.4 people to handle hundreds of devices, thousands of people when you include parents, lots of tech tickets. So really, we have to be highly organized in order to be one-to-one, as it says here, from grades 1 through 12, soon to be pre-K through 12, because we still have, and I say still, like many districts, have iPads in the lower grades. When you're dealing with the Chrome platform and iPad platform, 2 different platforms is not the best mix. We're going to be retiring those iPads once they age out in a year or 2 and replacing with touchscreen Chromebooks. In fact, ever since I've been here at Oakfield, I've never bought a Chromebook that is not touchscreen. I'm a big proponent of that because it works all the way through the K-12 span. Styluses now, if I show you one of our EMR magnetic styluses, are huge. I thought this might be something some people might use. Styluses are a huge request now, so we are making sure our Chromebooks are not only touchscreen capable, but EMR stylus capable too. So that's a little bit about the district there. Now, ClassLink, what we're talking about. Now, I jumped into ClassLink probably 3.5 years ago, and before I jumped in, I didn't know much about it at all. So if you are in my shoes now, or in your shoes now, just like I was 3 years ago, you may have heard of ClassLink. There's this portal, like you can see the picture here with icons. Really, I looked at it like most people do. I thought, oh, it's basically bookmarking. It's a way to have icons on the screen so that now it's like the old Windows interface where you can click on something or an iPad interface and you can launch it. That's a very, very simplistic view. It is a tool, I should say it's a platform that has many different aspects to it. So that's why I like this slide. It kind of shows you on the left-hand side where people look first is single sign-on. No, they're not just icons. They're actually icons that hold credentials. So, password, username. I hate the fact that when we're not efficient and we have kids stop instruction because they forget the password, what's their login, I spelled it wrong, anything that hinders the ability to get to where you got to go, in my opinion, is not good. We want to get people, where they need to be and not focus on passwords and stuff like that, especially during remote instruction when we don't have the teacher to just raise the hand and ask right there. If you're asking through an email, you're waiting for a response back, hours can pass before a kid can get what they need to sign on to something. So during the pandemic, especially more than ever, we were glad that we were ClassLink customers and had the portal to use. So other things here, and this is where Bob and Gail will talk about it because I'm only covering a piece of the pie here. Analytics. I have to figure out, out of the thousands and thousands of dollars we spend every year on software, what should we keep? What should we add? What should we remove? So our keep, add, remove list is a dynamic thing, and a big help to it is the analytics portal, because I can actually see, should we keep IXL? Should we keep Castle Learning? Like every year I'm on the, are we really getting our money's worth when we're paying thousands of dollars? This helps you decide based on how many people are logging in. Is it one grade level? Is it the whole building? Is it the whole district? So analytics are there to help you, make things black and white so they're not very gray. On the right side here, I'm going to talk a lot today about the OneSync server. That's really the focus of my talk today is how do we get people when they, enroll yesterday and I hand them a Chromebook, I needed to get them to everything with all of their accounts, all of their logins, all set. So, one day, less than 24 hours, I get people up to speed. And that's really thanks to OneSync server and the roster server. So I'll focus a lot on that today. And then I'll have Gail and Bob talk about the parent portal and the public portal. We're just dabbling with that a little bit. And like many people, we were starting to go there, but then the pandemic hit and we kind of put that on the back burner. So we will be looking at those other pieces eventually too. I should mention with ClassLink, because usually people wonder, what about the cost? Yes, there's a cost to ClassLink. If you do what I did, don't do it. Here's what I did. I'm going to talk about one of their competitors, which is Clever. Many of you have heard of Clever before. Clever, the draw there is it's free, right? It seems, oh, great, I can just jump in, it's free. But it's free because me, the employee here at the school, is the one doing all the work, contacting vendors, arranging the vendor and the logins. It's like, well, yeah, it's free because I'm the person on staff doing all the work. We did that for about 8 months or so, and I realized there's got to be a better way to do this whole single sign-on piece. And I did the research, which I would tell you also, do the research. And you're not going to find another vendor that does all the pieces that ClassLink does. Yes, you'll find someone that does rostering, someone that does Google account creation, someone that does single sign-on, but those are separate vendors that do different pieces. And when you're a 2.4 department like I am, I want to have one vendor that can just handle all of it. And that's where I really couldn't find anything other than ClassLink. I mean, they kind of have the corner on the market, if you will. But the price that we pay per student is very affordable. In fact, we run it through BOCES, so it's aidable too. It's, cost is not an issue. So don't let that be a deterrent if you're looking between ClassLink versus Clever and thinking, oh, I got to pay for ClassLink. That's because you're paying for the lots of people on staff that can answer your tickets within minutes a lot of times. There's a cost to that. So they have a lot of people that do all the different things. So that's my little spiel about the money side of it right off the bat here. So the screen we're looking at now is to sign into ClassLink. Look at all the different ways you can sign in. We don't use all of them because we don't need to use all of them. But if we did, because a certain vendor or a certain tool needed it, I can rest assured knowing that they have that ability to do the many different logins. We don't mess around too much with the quick cards, but I know a lot of people talk about that, especially if they were using Clever for that, because they want the real young kids to be able to have just a little, piece of paper that they can hold up to the screen. That does exist here with ClassLink. There's even face recognition and remote login from devices too, especially handy for pandemic learning as well. So as I kind of alluded to, why did we choose ClassLink? Well, I, like many people, thought I want a dashboard of icons where people can, know what do we pay for in our district? What's available to me? It's one place you go to get it. So look how simple ours is. We really are very heavily invested in Google. We have Chromebooks for all of our students and staff. Yes, our adults do have Windows desktops, but those are becoming more rare. I myself, the tech director here for 6 years, never even assigned myself a Windows desktop. I kind of was glad to leave that world behind. I call that a legacy system. My personal side of bias here might be coming in, but I like productivity. I like to be able to get to places fast, and I don't like waiting. So as a result, I really don't use a Windows desktop anymore because I don't have to. I'm sitting right here with a Chrome box running the show with a Chromebook on the side, so I'm kind of heavily invested in Chrome. So our login screen has just one single button that says sign in with Google. Literally one button makes it easy to get in. But if we were an Active Directory school, there would be another button on here that has the ability to log in with Active Directory credentials and many others too. So ours is very simplistic. I do want to point out at the top here, this is only a couple weeks old. Back in the olden days, when kids logged on to Windows desktops, they had a acknowledgement page which basically said, I will follow the code of conduct. Now that we have Chromebooks, you don't really have that ability. So I needed a way from a legal point of view, for someone to be able to see what is our acceptable use policy every single day that they log in. Since our ClassLink LaunchPad loads up automatically when you log in, we figured, hey, let's use that feature they have up top, which is a clickable button that will link someone to it. So problem solved. We're able to use an existing tool to take care of that. So the next three slides I'm going to show you here are the 3 different views you get with the LaunchPad. This is the classic or the original view, which is a grid of icons, as you can see here. This has been redesigned in the past year, so this is the newer version if you've been around ClassLink for a while. So this is the one that most viewers will see. If you have younger viewers, again, we want to make things really big and have bigger clickable areas because their little fingers are usually touching the touch screen. And when you have small little icons, they might inadvertently click the wrong one. So now we have larger icons to use with less bells and whistles on the screen for our primary viewers. And each viewer themselves can change it. The teacher, in many cases, will change it for the kids, but viewers can change this view themselves. And then we also have the professional view, which is more of a left-hand side navigation, gives you some more accessibility features and things like that. So those are the 3 views to look at. I mostly use the classic view. And what I want to show you here is the 5 ways to find this LaunchPad, because if you're a ClassLink customer, you want your people to be using your LaunchPad. You don't want to use the bookmarks. We all use bookmarks in Chrome. Yeah, that's great, but if you're using the bookmarks, I can't tell how many times you click into IXL or into Castle Learning or whatever the case is. So we really want to force our people to use the LaunchPad to get to their places so that we don't have to worry about analytics being inaccurate. So first off is from our district website. Most people are going to do this because if you're at home, especially if you're not on a school district device, it might be at your uncle's house and you're just logging onto his MacBook, you can always go to our website, oahornets.org, and find the LaunchPad icon. So it doesn't have to be a managed computer. That's a way that most people think in their mind, oh, it must be on the district website, and they go there. A second thing we've done is a managed bookmark. Because we manage our Chromebooks, we have the ability to force a folder or a bookmark ourselves. So in the upper left-hand corner under OA Staff, you can see our 4 commonly used items are here, and LaunchPad is one of them. In the Google Admin Console, I have set the browser homepage so that, you guys are seeing my mouse, right? Yeah. So when you hit the familiar home button on your browser bar, because of the way I have it set up here, it will go automatically to our LaunchPad. A 4th way is a force loaded tab at boot up. So upon logging into your Chromebook each day, the Chrome browser loads automatically, and then pops out a tab, which is the LaunchPad. So it's right in your face without you doing anything other than just signing in. And then lastly, this is something I did more recently in the past couple of years. For $12 a year, you can register any domain name. All right. So what I chose to do was purchase oalaunchpad.org. So for $12 a year, I just pay that, and we have people to type in a direct link to get directly to it. I'm sure there's other methods too. We can talk about that in the chat at the end. But those are the ways we found to make sure all of our people aren't saying, hey, how do I get to the LaunchPad? Like in Oakfield, it's very obvious because you have many ways to get there. Now, when you first look at this screen, you might be thinking, whoa, that's a lot of icons. If I'm a kid and I'm looking for parent square, that's a lot of looking, rows, columns, everything like that. Don't worry, you can use the search bar. Just like Google, you can search, and ClassLink, you can search. My yellow arrow is pointing here right to that search bar. So I could just start typing in like PARENT. As I'm starting to type in parent square, you would see the parent square icon right there. So I don't really bother looking through the grid when I have a very busy LaunchPad. I just start typing it, and it comes up automatically there. Something else you can do too that our users really like is you can add them to the bottom. So the 4 you see at the bottom here are the favorites bar. if on any icon, and I did this on I think WeVideo here, I right-clicked on it, and then you can choose Add to Favorites, and it puts it right at the bottom. So if students can manage and teachers can manage themselves what they consider to be their favorites, they can choose them, bookmark them, and put them at the bottom, so they have kind of a quick link way to get to them. All right, other icons you will see I'm pointing here is rostered. So if there's a little key icon, the secret to that means is it's not just simply a bookmark. It's better than a bookmark. That icon contains credentials, a username and a password that might be pushed out by me centrally, or it might be typed in by the user the very first time that they log into it. Therefore, it acts as a password manager or a password locker. It stores it. So in the future, you're not stopped by a screen where you have to type in credentials. So any of my icons that you have that symbol on it, that's what that means. It's a rostered item. The other symbol you'll see here can't be deleted by a staff or student. We want to make sure I can guarantee that what I think is on the LaunchPad is actually there. We don't want our users deleting stuff and saying, hey, I don't see iReady anymore. I can guarantee that iReady is on your LaunchPad because I, as the administrator, locked it down, so you can't delete it. You can move where it's located if you want. So if you want to rearrange it or alphabetically, you can do that. But I at least have a guarantee that there's no way for the user to delete it, so we can basically say it's there. So better than a bookmark. If you want to have rostered applications, this means the vendor has to be on board with it. So as you can imagine, probably thousands, if not millions of different apps out there. Not everyone is going to be rostering with ClassLink. So as me being the tech director, talking to vendors, my first question is, do you guys roster with ClassLink? And if you don't, can you? And Patrick, that works at ClassLink, is the person that we direct everyone to. If they don't roster, that's kind of in our discussion about, are we going to buy this new tool? If they're not rostering with ClassLink, we might look at other vendors that do similar things just because they're not rostering with ClassLink. So the list right now is growing. You can see I took a screenshot of the beginning of the list. How many? Well, as of this last couple of months here, I grabbed this slide from ClassLink, 6,000 single sign-ons. I remember when they used to say 3,000 and 5,000. Now it's 6,000. So the number is always growing. But you might be wondering, well, what if they're not on this list? Okay, because that could be a problem. There is a way to add it, and I'm going to get to that in one moment here. This graphic here is a good depiction of how the flow works. All right, our student information system that we use here, and many of us in New York State use, is School Tool. But if you're using something else, PowerSchool, eSchool, whatever the case is, ClassLink works with all of those vendors. So they know that they can pull from your data source of your student information system that has your staff and your students. You might not have the non-instructional staff. They might be here in the HR system, human resources, or the payroll system. Here at Oakfield, we didn't really want to mess around with iVisions, infinite visions that we have, because I don't feel it's very friendly to do exports. So what I have done is I've taken the non-instructional staff, basically any adult on the payroll is a way to boil it down, and I put them in the student information system. So our student information system, School Tool, contains not just the students and the teachers, but it contains the cafeteria workers, the maintenance workers, the bus drivers, you name it. Essentially anyone on our payroll is in School Tool, and I use that as the main data source. So this first bubble for me is where all the data is coming from. But just to show you, it can come from other places, even custom places too. They've designed ways to pull in data from pretty much any data source that you have. And it all flows here into the middle, which is called the roster server. The roster server, I believe, can be hosted on-premise or in the cloud. My personal preference, let us host it in the cloud. I pay ClassLink to do that so that they are hosting it. They apply the updates. They take care of the security patches. Again, I'm a two-person shop here, so I'd rather not have more servers to manage myself. So we have it be a cloud-hosted server. And then what it's showing, it's pushing out to, these are just generic icons on the right. Those are your applications. That's your Renaissance Learning, IXL, iReady, whatever the case is that you're using. So I like that graphic because I think it shows a nice flow how through there. But like I said before, so what about the apps you have that are not, at least not yet, on that list? They don't work with ClassLink yet. Can we save simply the passwords and never need to type them in again? I think I already gave this answer away. Yes, the answer is yes. And what that looks like is this screen right here. I took this screenshot from one of our applications. I just right-clicked on it, and I said update password. Notice I have the ability, the first time you log in, and you're going to see this screen. It's going to say, I think this was Freckle, if I'm not mistaken here. In Freckle, there's a class code, there's a first name, a last name, and a password. Likely the teacher set up the accounts, gave this information to the kids, put it on a 3x5 card, but we don't want the kid to have that piece of paper, every time they need to use it. This acts as the password locker. The data that kids type in is stored, and then this is what's known as a custom built connector that ClassLink will build for you at no extra charge, and then is there. But here's the problem. What if login credentials change? Okay, my second graders now become third graders next year, or, which inevitably happens, the kid typed the password in wrong, and now every time they try to log in, it says, nope, you can't get in, something's wrong. It used to be like, well, we got to get the teacher involved, get the IT staff involved, change the password. Not that way anymore. It's super simple. The user themselves or the teacher on their behalf can right click on any icon and go here to edit password, and they can make sure the credentials are what they need to be. For us, that happens a lot when they move up a grade level because their last year's data is still in there. Now the kid can put in the current year's data. So it's super simple to change that. So your app login options. Depending on what the vendor uses, there may be, I was just working with Naviance this past week. They may use SAML, they might use Google, they might use Active Directory, OAuth. There's many different login technologies to use. The nice part is ClassLink supports all of them, as you can see here. So there are no limits on what tools you may use. If you're heavily Microsoft, heavily Google, a combination of both. Even that last one I just talked about a moment ago, the password vault, there's a way to store those credentials and have things rostered that way. So OneSync is similar to the roster server, but you can see there's more green bubbles on the side here, meaning we can pull in more information to get OneSync to roster. I even like the idea of the Google Sheet. I use Google Sheets for a lot of stuff, so I can even use that as a data source. But again, here at Oakfield, the Student Information System school tool for us is where all the data is coming from. And I'm going to go through some screenshots here to show you that I've taken how that workflow looks. I want to show you guys what's it like if I find out, an hour from now, hey, a new kid just enrolled, and it's feels like a Friday today, but it's Tuesday. I need them to be available tomorrow to use the tools. That's more common, having students come and go. What's less common is having teachers come and go, but it does happen. So I'll show you that workflow is similar, but a little bit different. There's more variables when we're bringing adult staff members in because they just have more needs than student accounts do. So as my note says at the bottom, at OA, we chose to have OneSync and OneRoster totally cloud hosted. So I don't have to worry about managing servers or updates, security patches, things like that. Now, OneSync is the middle guy here, but you can see off on the right side here, this is kind of a back and forth. Active Directory, which we did have set up in the beginning. We don't really have kids logging onto Windows desktops as much anymore. So I took Active Directory out of the loop here at Oakfield. But just know that we did start with that, which many schools will start with Active Directory and or Google. We started with both. But I've dropped Active Directory now because we really don't need it. And it's we got into a groups issue where we, it was putting kids in one group and we'd have manually move them. So I figured, let's just have Rich, he normally sits behind me. Rich manages Active Directory manually because we don't have that much come and go with it, but it can be done if you needed it to be. Google is what we're using, and notice Google Classroom, little asterisk there, is telling us requires the ClassLink roster server. Google Classroom for us is populated and maintained daily, through automatic sync. So I don't have to worry about adding or removing kids, and our teachers don't have to do that either. So on to the next slide here, the magic of OneSync. Our dream scenario, when a student is enrolled, and not by me, I don't type it in, it's Kim, our registrar. She types in all the data that she gets when a kid enrolls in the district. That happens regardless of OneSync or not. That's been happening for years. Kim's been doing that even before we had ClassLink. So she does her usual routine of typing in the kid's information in our student information system. Then magically, all these things I have as bullet points just happen within either instantly or within the next 24 hours. And I'll show you how you can manually push that forward too if you need it sooner.
Okay, I've heard automagically twice the last 2 days. It's like the new term, so I like it. Just wanted to let you know.
We are
automagically
happen, and it feels like magic because I know the technical side behind why it's working, but to explain it to someone, they're like, that's magic. You do minimal work and all these things happen. So it does feel like magic. So the big one is that first bullet point. The major accounts become populated. And for us, that's Google, but it could also be Active Directory. They are put in the correct OU structure, in our case in Google, and grade level. because that data is already tied to the student. You know, if a student is a 2021 student, they know that's a senior, a 12th grader, and it puts it in the right email group and the right OU structure. They're added to the applicable email groups, we said, gains access to our LaunchPad, so that ability to log into the LaunchPad just happens automatically. And they're rostered for all the stuff we use. And for us, that's a list of about 14 items right now, but that could grow over time. The big ones for us is iReady, iExcel, Google Classroom, BrainPop, and then there's Naviance is a new one we added, and that list is always growing. So that's the dream scenario. The registrar does his or her thing, and then it just happens. Now for us, there's one step I have to do, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So there's work on my part. I have to, I won't ruin the suspense. I'll show you in a minute here. Now what I put in yellow is what I think is almost just as, if not more important, is when the student leaves, because before we had ClassLink, the yellow stuff didn't happen automatically. It would mean Rich or myself, you know, when we had time on our hands, would go into Active Directory or go into Google and go into School Tool and disable things and change things and move them into a different inactive state. We just don't have time for that. There's just too many things happening, especially during a pandemic, to be able to make sure that from a security standpoint, we tighten things up and depopulate all those things. And now bringing EdLaw 2D in New York State, it becomes even more important that our data flow just ceases to exist when students leave. And so we need all these things to auto-magically go away when the student leaves. So as I have in the bullet points there, all those things automatically happen when Kim, the registrar, marks them as inactive. And it's really just one check mark she has to have that's in School Tool that makes them inactive. And then within 24 hours, all that stuff happens automatically. So I wanted to explore the process here at OA. And because of security concerns, of course, these are all screenshots. And I did a lot of blurring out. I had to be very careful what I showed because I can't actually show you our student information system and stuff like that. So thankfully, in a little bit here, Bob and Gail can show what it looks like from a fake school district that they have a portal and an account they can show. But I have at least screenshots to show you what it truly looks like from my day-to-day usage here. And just remember, every school gets to customize which tools and methods they use. What I'm about to show you here is our way at Oakfield, but it's highly customizable. That's why at the start, you will work with an account manager and other managers at ClassLink to figure out, what are your goals? What do you want to be automated and what do you want to manually still do? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's a lot of different options that you have. And so for us, here's the process of adding a student. Here's a shot of my inbox. This email just came in the other day. All right, so School Tool, our student information system, will alert us through an email notification that a new student, as it says in red, has been added to School Tool. All right, I will see not the name of the student, but the number, the student ID. So I'll jump into School Tool, and that's my next step here, and I'll go find that student. And all I simply have to do is type in the desired email address. Now, why can't we automate that, right? We know the first name, we know their last name, we know the grade level, just automate it. If it's Johnny Smith, who's a senior, then call it Johnny Smith 21 at oehornets.org. At first, you might think that'll work, right? But a lot of times you have Johnny Smith Jr., Johnny Smith the third, Johnny Smith Hernandez Cortez. You have like hyphenated names, you have prefixes, suffixes, stuff like that. So I figured it's not a heavy lift for me to do this. I will type in the desired email address. If a kid has, like me, a really long last name, maybe I'll shorten their first initial and have them do the last name. I'll customize it depending on how many characters are going to be in it. So in this case, I put in Johnny Smith 21, if it's a senior, at oehornets.org. This red arrow is showing it. That's all I really have to do. The other piece that I have to verify is that the eye color for password is there. Now this gets really into the weeds here. In School Tool, there are a lot of fields, as you can see, like height and weight, that we just never use. So I wanted it to be where me and the teacher would know what is the password for the child in case we had to log in as that child on their Chromebook. All right, I don't want it to be like, well, I can't get in because I have to ask little Susie, what's your password? And I have to, wait for her response so I can log in as her to troubleshoot. I basically needed to log in, override the student and know what their passwords are. So what we did is kind of a hybrid approach here. We didn't put the full password in, but I commandeered this field, if you will, that says eye color, and I put in half of their password there. all of our students have a prefix of OASD, Oakfield Alabama School District. So all of our 8-character passwords, they begin the same way, just for ease of use. But the last 4 digits are randomly chosen. And that's what I've blurred out here is the actual last 4 digits of their 8-character password. For us, we were able to, working with BOCES, get that field to populate. That's coming from basically like a serial number of the kid that just gets dumped right in there. So all I have to do is verify it's there. I think 99% of the time it is. If I'm really quick to the draw and I'm doing this step, it might not have populated yet, but most of the time it's there. So simply, that's the heavy lift for me. Type in the emailed address, just verify the ad color's there, and that's it. Then everything is set. And as you can see, is step 3, wait for the overnight sync to occur. So usually that's okay because maybe the student's not even on our campus yet. Or I can trigger it now because sometimes I get the phone call that says, hey, Johnny Smith is sitting in science class and he needs his stuff. He can't get in. That's like an urgent thing that I need to push right away. So I can jump here into the roster server. I look under the imports tab up top there, and there's the import now button. And there's actually 2 buttons. There's import now and then the 3 dots. Because we're using School Tool, it uses the School Tool API, which is an even quicker way of pulling in the data. So I can hit that button and literally within 30 seconds to 60 seconds, everything becomes populated. The account can now be logged into, and then all of their other accounts start to get created for BrainPop and iExcel and iReady and all that stuff. So you could be patient and wait the 24 hours, or you can trigger it now. That's what it looks like when I have to add a student.
Is that the automatically button?
That's right. That's the automatic button to push it and make it happen.
Sorry, I had to.
So it's very similar when we're adding staff, but there are little other considerations here. So pulling from different sources, you might want to set it up so that you pull from your payroll or HR system their data instead of getting from your student information system like we're doing. You could even use a Google Sheet. Therefore, select the columns that you want to be used for that data to be pulled in. Or like I said, using the SIS like we're using. You want to consider too, instructional versus non-instructional staff. For us, if they're an instructional staff, that means they have a schedule of classes they teach, and therefore they export out automatically. Here's the catch. If it's a custodian or a bus driver or a cafeteria worker or a substitute teacher, they don't have a schedule. So therefore they don't export out automatically. We had to work with our BOCES. And again, if you're in New York State, this, you have a BOCES. We work with BOCES to have them help us to create an export out, to export those non-instructional staff out automatically. However, that is a script and that runs once a day at 7 a.m. So depending on where I am in the day, I don't really have the ability to wait for the next day at 7 a.m. I kind of need that to happen fast. I can write to my guys at BOCES, and they're really good about pulling the trigger within, an hour or so. But
hey, can I ask a question? Just curious, curiosity.
Yes. Go ahead.
Your non-instructional staff are in what system?
Everybody is in our student information system, including the non-instructional staff. I had to make that. I wanted one spot where I had a database of all of our users, adult and kids.
Okay. Are you pulling from your, just curious, I don't remember, are you pulling from the HR?
We are not. I looked at what that would be to set up a custom export. The vendor wanted to charge us a lot of money to create a custom export for us, and then it could not be automated. It had to be like someone manually going in and pulling the trigger. And I was like, no.
What HR system?
It was Infinite Visions, also known as iVisions. We're one of the rare ones here in Genesee County that use that. Most people use it.
I was going to say, because we've done it with InVisions and what's the other big one, WinCap. So for those on the call, we've already worked with districts to do that as a process. So,
and that's probably where most people will be. We're one of the rare ones using Infinite Visions, but that makes sense. And then staff also have different needs. They might be in a multitude of groups, like middle school building, special ed group, technology committee. They have a lot of unique things that really our students don't. So what I tend to do is after a staff is added, I make a note for myself to come back 24 hours and just verify in Google all the groups we want them to be a part of. So there is something checks and balances I do the following day whenever we add staff. All right, so you have complete control with setting this up. And this is what I was talking about. The setup, you're going to have a project manager working with you from ClassLink. working through all the different pieces, like what do you want to happen when someone is suspended? Should we move them? Should we keep them in the OU? Should we take them out of the groups? Should we just ignore the groups? Like all those decisions you have to make, they'll work with you on it. You can see the left-hand navigation here. It's kind of a wizard approach of when you're working with OneSync. You start at the top with your destination details, which would be either Active Directory or Google. And then you work through the different pieces there. You can see my rules here apply differently for different groups. We've changed these, over the years to kind of fine tune. And then there's a lot of if-then logic can be used to accomplish those goals. So, if you're good at math and you know what if-then means, it's if this, then make that happen. There's a lot of that happens here behind the scenes to automate the process. So this is where now I'm going to turn it over to Bob and Gail. So I should stop sharing my screen here. And they're going to walk you through some of the other pieces here that we do use. We're just dabbling with some of them, like the parent portal and the public portal, but they'll be able to show you from a more, portal view. So I think, Bob, are you able to share your screen now that I stopped mine?
Can you see it now?
Yep, and we got it.
Do you want me to go kind of under the engine at OneSync? Because I think you did a great job describing it. And I can show a little of the under the engine if you prefer. Okay. So you tell me, and then we'll talk about some of the other things that are part of the package. So this is a OneSync. So if you're on the call and you're a programmer or somebody who likes data and programming, this will make sense to you more than somebody who might come from an instructional background. So the OneSync server in general, when Rob spoke about it, can take from a source environment, as he described already, and push to an endpoint, any endpoint environment that you want, or all three endpoint environments. Rob did a great job and always presents so well about the process and speaks to kind of the benefits. This will also deactivate accounts. So just make sure that if you want to set up the rules, that if somebody becomes inactive in Envisions or your student information system, that they get pulled back. So it's good for kind of security of identity management and stuff. But just to show you under the OneSync portion, there is the ability for you to pull from any source. So if I'm going to go in here and let's walk through an example of me pulling in and writing from School Tool as an example, I would set up an import from School Tool and the thresholds. So thresholds often get increased at back to school when you're importing your kindergartners and taking on new students and stuff. But you would set up a sync from School Tool as an example, and you would work with a project specialist and you would map the data you want to bring over from the source, the SIS, to OneSync. And now on the other side of this, we're going to write to AD as an example, just one example. You could do it to Google, you could do it to both environments, depending on how your workflow works in district, but it's designed to be user-friendly, drop down. So you want to bring grade in as grade year, and you want to bring grade in as grade calc. Now, if you're writing to AD, you need to have 3 minimum fields: a given name, surname, unique ID. When you bring that data over, you're going to do some data transformation. So an example might be pre-K comes over from the SIS, you make it a -1 value. The school code or number is 106, but we want it to be labeled as Rocky Mountain High. So we actually know what building it is, especially if you're in a district with multiple buildings where you just don't remember the numbers from the SIS. When you bring that data over, you will spend time writing to AD or Google as an environment. So you'll connect to your AD environment. This is where you spend a lot of time in general. This is where you make the decisions of, okay, so what is the description going to be? And again, you can add any custom fields. So you could have multiple fields here that you're creating an AD and writing to. When you do a password, you create whatever structure you want in district. So we work with you to write the rules around, hey, what does the password look like? In this example, it only creates it that first time because in a lot of districts, K through 3, they have a generic password. 3rd, 4th grade and above, they change it, and all staff change it. So you don't want it to rewriting the password if they've changed it in AD. You can put them in whatever organizational groups. What's nice is you can change the OU groups as time goes on. If you decide that you want to, the following year, have certified versus non-certified as an OU group, you can. but this example is district, school, student, grade. You create the SAM account name, which needs to be unique. So you create the criteria for that. This represents chapel B #1 if it's already taken, but you can write whatever rules you want. So this is completely flexible to write what's needed for you. I would say the best thing about the custom mappings is, again, in the lower grades, most districts have some kind of generic password that gets created that they don't change, so the teacher knows it. And then also what I love about kind of being able to set up events is you can set up the most popular one, which is what happens if the person becomes disabled in the source, the HR or the SIS, they get moved to an inactive status. So you have that security. Is that good, Rob? In general, kind of looking under the engine?
Yeah, that looks good. Thank you, Bob.
Let's go back for a minute. And I'll talk about a couple other things that are within ClassLink. So the parent portal is basically a single sign-on environment for parents to log in. In a pandemic world, it probably may not be your most important piece, but to implement, but for some districts, the superintendent wants a parent portal. Most districts, if they're new to us during kind of a pandemic environment, single sign-on rostering is most important for a lot of districts. The parent portal allows for you to invite, and I'll show you a visual of that. I'm gonna have to log out. Oh, where'd it go? There we go. There we go. All right. So basically, the parent gets or guardian gets an invitation to create and log into a portal where instead of all the teaching and learning tools, be able to log into this. I did something wrong. The parent portal basically, instead of showing the icons that the students use, would be Naviance school tool, their lunch account, how to change their mass alert number, maybe the superintendent's newsletter that gets pushed out, those things that are important to parents. The public portal, which is also a key piece, it's not rocket science, but what it does is that part of the Ed Law 2D requires the districts to be transparent in what they're using. And what this does is it pulls in the resources, and we have these nice icons, graphics, and it will pull in what you're using as a resource or tool. And if I go to one of these resources, ClassLink has done some of the grunt work, and they've built in the privacy in terms of service within those resources. So we built these in, and districts can either put a note here that they bought it through the BOCES, so it's Ed 2D compliant, or if they signed an individual agreement with this vendor, they could put a link to that. A lot of districts in New York State also design it to have key resources in the banner. They actually tag so that people can look for what's used in the elementary for science or reading. And I like in New York where they have the folders of approved, under review, and not approved. So that if something was requested by your staff and you reviewed it and determined it wasn't Ed 2D compliant, you can say why it wasn't approved.
Rob and Bob, I just want to give you a highlight. We're approaching 10:20, which is the end of the session. So it's about 10, it just hit 10:13. I didn't want to interrupt at any other time. So I don't know if you want to do questions or if you want to just keep crushing through, if you have some things you need to talk about. So I just wanted to give you that warning, and I'm going to throw the evaluation and the reminder about CTLE in the chat for everybody as well.
Okay, yeah. I'm just going to talk about the analytics piece just briefly. This has gotten 5-fold the number of logins from districts when the pandemic hit, because we've added new heat maps, we've added data to see if students are logging in, we've added exportable reports to make sure that digital learning is happening. So just a trend, and something that is very important is the analytics, that districts are now making decisions, not just about should we buy it, do we need to put PD into it, but are we monitoring digital learning and is it happening? So questions? Rob, you want to see if there's any burning questions from the group?
Sure. If anybody has a question, go ahead. You can unmute your mic, turn on your camera if you want, and ask those questions now. There's also the chat. I see people are writing in there too.
Great. Thank you. Very informative.
Yeah, a lot of your chat seemed to be very supportive. Some people like the quick cards for the younger kids. Definitely talking about the ease of use and the accessibility seem to be summary points in your chat today.
Very good.
Thank you. Nice job, Rob.
Thank you. If anyone wants to share this then with a colleague or administrator or whatnot, I'm going to try to obtain the recording and put it on my website there, robztraining.com, so we can refer back to it there too.
And just for anybody that is not a client, you know, because we often get clients since we have so many in New York, but if you're not a client, you can request a demo by also going to classlink.com. There's a simple request a demo button if you want to learn more, or you can email Gail at classlink.com. So we're here to help if you want to take a deeper dive. Rob, you did great. I was getting text messages from the ClassLink folks, the couple on here, saying you were doing a good job. They liked your style. So
very good. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. All right. Thank you.
All right. So it looks like, Jonathan, I think we're good. If there's no other questions, we can end the recording, and we'll say thanks for joining us today, guys.
Sounds good, everybody. And I just want to highlight that everybody at ClassLink has been great. We're new users in my district. So everybody I need support with has been amazing. So continue if you're a new potential customer. I don't work for them, but I'll give you the endorsement.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good holiday, everybody.
Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. Thank you.